All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started this morning with our program. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Pat Kane, Public Programs and Visitor Services Coordinator with the Museum of the Grand Prairie, and doing other cultural and historical programs throughout there it is, Champaign County Forest Preserve District. And we're going to kick off our virtual Harvest Fest program right now this morning. In just a few moments, I'm going to bring on Kim Sheahan, Assistant Director of Education at Spurlock Museum, where she is going to tell some awesome, scary stories that are kid-friendly as well. One thing before we get started, before I turn it over to Kim, let us know where you're watching from this morning. Write it down in the comment section below. I'm streaming live from my house in Champaign, Illinois. As you can see, we are very festive here at the Kane household. My wife did an excellent job decorating the fireplace behind me, and she said to make sure to let everybody know that she did the decorating. So she did an awesome job. But let us know where you're watching from today, whether you're watching from Central Illinois, other parts of the state, other parts of the United States, maybe even across the world. Write that down in the comment section below. This program is a part of our virtual Harvest Fest event, as I just mentioned. This is a popular annual program we do every October, and unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, we cannot do it in person, but we're trying our best to do it virtually this year. So this is the first program of first activity, first piece of content that will premiere throughout the day on our Facebook and YouTube pages where you are watching us right now. So tune in throughout the day for a whole bunch of awesome content, a part of the Harvest Fest event. You can check out the event schedule on our Facebook page in the Facebook events tab to learn what will be coming at you later on today. See, my mom is watching from Rantoul. Hey, Mom. She hasn't seen the Halloween decorations in the house yet, so this is what it looks like. But let us know where you're watching from. Write that down in the comment section below. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Sheahan. As I mentioned, she is the Assistant Director of Education at the Spurlock Museum, and every year comes out and tells some really awesome, scary stories next to our campfire out at the Harvest Fest annual event, and I'm excited to have her join us this morning. So let's give a warm virtual welcome to Kim Sheahan.
Yay! Hi, everybody. I am so glad to be back to the Harvest Fest. And I was thinking, okay, it's 10 in the morning. What can we do to make it feel more like a scary time around the campfire? So I thought I brought my my quilted vest with the little hood on the top, which I would normally wear when I'm storytelling at a campfire. This way you can still see my arms and everything, but it usually keeps me warm. I also have one of my very favorite drinking cups today. It's very Halloween in its theme, but it also, let me push the button. There we go. It lights up. So this is our campfire. Okay, so you might see it kind of flickering for the next few seconds over there to my side, but getting a little bit more in the mood for what we're going to be doing. Now, considering I had no idea what age my audience was going to be today, I do have two, let's call them more spooky stories, okay? But nothing that's super, super scary, no big blood or anything. And I'm sorry if that disappoints a lot of you, but the last thing I want is for anybody not being able to sleep tonight, who's very small. So I just hope you enjoy the fact that we're telling some good stories, okay? And I want to start with a classic, one that has been around forever, one that I'm hoping that I've changed just enough so that even if you're familiar with the story, you're still going to enjoy it. And if you do know the story and there are other people sitting around the computer listening to the story who may not know the ending, I would very, very much appreciate it if you would keep it a secret until we get to the end, okay? So this is the Blue Velvet Ribbon. There was a new girl at the high school, and Johnny saw her when she came into homeroom first thing in the morning, and she was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And he thought, she'd be even more beautiful if she would smile. But it was her first day. She was a new girl and she was too nervous to smile. But Johnny watched her in homeroom, and then she was in math with him the next hour, and then the next and the next. And Johnny got to really, look at how pretty she was, but also to see how smart she was too. Well, it came time for lunch, and he thought, okay, I really want to meet her. What should I do? And he thought about all those things that his parents had always told him in terms of meeting a new person. And one of the things they always stressed was say something nice about the person. And Johnny had been thinking of what that would be. And one of the things he had noticed that morning was that this girl, her name was Amelia. He loved that name. But the girl was wearing this blue velvet ribbon around her neck. And at one point, he saw that ribbon matched her eyes. So he thought that might be a good thing to talk about. So everybody went into the lunchroom, and Amelia got her tray, and she sat down at a table. Nobody else was there. She didn't have any friends yet to sit with. And so Johnny came up and had his tray, stood across the table from her, and said, hi, my name is Johnny. And she said, I've seen you in my classes this morning. My name is Amelia. And he said, yeah, I know, I heard. I wanted to let you know that I thought that your ribbon matched your eyes, and it was just the most beautiful shade of blue. Could I sit with you and talk for a while? And while Johnny was talking, while Johnny was doing this, what he thought was wonderful compliment, she just kind of closed down. Johnny, I think you're very, very polite, and I really appreciate that you have asked to sit here, and I would love to spend lunch with you, but I just need to tell you one thing, and that is I don't ever talk about my ribbon. Oh, Johnny said, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry, but if you'll let me sit here, I'll try to make it up to you. And so they sat down and they talked, and it was a wonderful conversation. They found out they had so much in common, and they just laughed, and she began to smile, and he had been right. He knew once she smiled, it would be radiant. And I think Johnny fell in love right there in the lunchroom. But it was just the beginning. Once they had met, once they'd had that conversation, they were inseparable. They were together every minute they could be. And Johnny loved it, but he still had now this nagging in the back of his head that, first of all, Amelia didn't want to talk about this blue ribbon, but second, she wore it every single day. And it never seemed to get dirty. It never frazzled. It never broke. It was just always there. But he loved Amelia, and he tried his best not to let it bother him. Well, on graduation day from high school, Johnny got down on one knee and he proposed to Amelia, and of course she said yes. On their wedding day, Johnny saw Amelia coming up the aisle, beautiful white gown, and that blue ribbon around her neck. Now, that night, he'd been thinking, Johnny had, that maybe she didn't want to talk about the ribbon because it might be something embarrassing, or, something that you really had to trust somebody to tell him about. But he thought, we just got married. She has told me she's going to trust me for the rest of my life, and I've told her. And so he went up to Amelia and he held her hand and he said, honey, you know I love you. And I hope that you trust me. And I hope that that trust means that maybe you'll talk to me about your ribbon. Amelia said, Johnny, I just can't talk about it. Okay? And it's the only thing in the whole universe that I won't trust you about, but please, please don't ask. All right, Johnny said. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. No, honey, she said, I just don't want to talk about it. Well, things went really well. And a little over a year after they got married, they had a baby, a beautiful girl. And they were just so happy. And that girl, she had blue eyes, just the same color as her mother's. And one night, the baby was kind of fussing a little bit in her cradle. And so Johnny went over to rub her belly a little and speak softly to her and let her get back to sleep. And as he is looking at this little baby and thinking about, oh, she has eyes just like her mother. And that thought came right back, the same color as the ribbon. And so we thought, okay, she loves me. She married me. We have a baby. Certainly, I can find out what it is about this blue velvet ribbon. And so when the baby was sleeping again, Johnny went over to the bed and he kind of sat down next to where his wife was sleeping and kind of put an arm around her to hold her and feel how warm and snuggly she was. And then very softly, he took hold of an end of the bow on that ribbon and he pulled. And the ribbon came off in his hand and Amelia's head rolled into his lap. Her blue eyes, dead, but staring at him. And that's the story of the blue velvet ribbon. Like I said, you may have heard other versions of it. I love when I can find lots of versions of the same story. I love it when I can kind of make one up on my own. And like I said, I hope you enjoyed it. So my second story is one I actually just found this week. And it was in a book of spooky stories from around the world. And considering I work at the Spurlock Museum, I'm in the museum right now, and we are a museum of world cultures. I love to be able to tell folk tales from all over the world. So the tale that I'm about to tell you is from Tibet. So I want you to think mountains and cold, okay? And the name of our story is The Old Ogre. Now, one of the main characters in the story is a fox. And in many parts of East Asia, Southeast Asia, foxes are tricksters. A trickster is an animal or a person who very logically tricks another animal or another person. And so watch how clever Fox is in this story. So one day, there was a mother and a daughter, and the mother needed to go run some errands. And the daughter just was happy staying home, but the mother wanted to make sure that she gave some very strict instructions to her daughter. She wasn't that old, and the mother wanted to make sure she was protected. So she said, now, as soon as I leave, I want you to make sure that the front door and the back door are locked, and don't let anybody in until I come home. Yes, Mama, the little girl said. And so mother went out and she stood right outside the door until she heard her daughter lock that door. And off she went to do her errands. Now, it just so happened that on that mountain lived an ogre. He lived in one of the caves up higher on the mountain. And this ogre ate people. So as you can imagine, that's one of the reasons the mother wanted to have the door locked, was in case the ogre came by. She wanted her daughter to be safe. Well, it just so happened that the ogre was coming out of the woods near the mother and daughter's house as the mother was telling her daughter to make sure to be safe and to lock the doors. So the ogre waited until the mother was out of sight and said, "Aha! I am going to have a little girl for breakfast." And so the ogre went up to the door and said in his most motherly-like voice, "Dear, it's your mother. I have forgotten something and I need to come back in to get it so I can go run my errands. Please unlock the door for me." Well, the little girl inside was pretty sure that that voice did not go with her mother. And so she said, "If you're my mother, I want you to do this for me." Now, you'll notice here at the front door, there's a little hole in the wood of the door. What I want you to do, she said, is put your hand in front of that hole and I can look at it and guarantee you are my mother. "All right," the ogre said, and the ogre put his hand in front of that hole in the door. And basically all the little girl could see was that the hand in front of the hole in the door was very, very hairy, which meant, it wasn't her mother. "I'm not going to let you in. You are not my mother," the little girl said. And so the ogre thought, he said, "Well, dear, I am on my way home and I have to go through the forest, and you know, there's leaves all over and it's really, really shady and sometimes it's kind of hard to see in the forest. Could I borrow a lantern from you and then, light the candle in it so I can see on my way home?" Well, that wasn't a bad request, and it didn't require the little girl to open up the door. So she took a lantern and she put a candle in it and she lit the candle. And now she didn't want to open the front door because she knew whatever it was right outside the front door. So she took that lantern with the lit candle and she went to the back door and she unlocked it and she opened it just far enough to put that lantern out there. Boom, close the door and lock it. Well, the ogre didn't know it was going to the back door until it was too late, but it was okay with the ogre because the ogre didn't really want the lantern to be able to see in the forest. He had just come through the forest. What he wanted was to take that candle, which he did, and he used the flame to burn off all the hair on his hand and his arm. Dear, it's your mother. Please unlock the door. I've forgotten something." And the little girl went to the door. "Mother, put your hand in front of that hole so I can see you," the little girl said. "Oh, okay." And the ogre put his hand in front of the door in the hole again. And all the little girl could see really was that it was a hand without hair. So, well, that must be her mother. And she unlocked the door and boom! In came the ogre. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And the girl just started, it was a little house, but she started running all around. It's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get away from this ogre? And she got an idea. And she ended up climbing up into the beams at the top of the house. And it was so high up, the ogre couldn't reach her. But the ogre had an excellent nose, and he started sniffing around the house until he finally sniffed that the little girl was right above him. "I know you're there," the ogre said. "I'm not going to pretend to be your mother anymore. But what I need is for you to tell me this. How did you climb up there?" And the girl thought, what am I going to say? Got it. I got up here because I made a pile of needles and I climbed up that pile of needles to get up here. "Okay," the ogre said. And so the ogre went all over the house getting needles. Now, it didn't make a very big pile, because you don't keep that many needles around the house. But The ogre thought, well, at least it gets me a little bit higher and towards that set of beams there. And so he stepped on those needles. Ah! Ow! Ow! And he sat down and he pulled all of those needles out of his feet. He was so angry. I know you lied to me, little girl, the ogre said. Tell me, how did you climb up there? And the girl thought again and said, I made a pile of cups and I climbed up those cups and that made it so that I could reach the beam. And the ogre said, all right, you better be telling me the truth. And so the ogre went around the house, found as many cups as he could, and he went to step on that pile of cups to climb up. But ogres are big. Ogres are heavy. And that whole pile of cups just crashed. Little girl, I am furious. Now, normally, I kill people before I eat them, but because you have made me so angry, if you do not tell me the truth, I will eat you alive. And the girl was so scared, she told him the truth. She said, you'll see there's some barrels over there, and I put a pile of barrels together, and I climbed up the barrels, and that's how I got up here. And so the ogre did the same thing. He got up there. He was able to reach that girl, grab her by the arm, and drag her out of the house and all the way to his cave, where he put her into a sack and tied up the top. Now, when the mother got home from doing all of her errands, what did she encounter first but an open front door? She called for her daughter. She looked all over the house and she realized something bad had happened. And of course, with the ogre living on the mountain, that was the first thing she thought of. The ogre's got her. So she knew it was quite a hike to be able to get to the ogre, and she wanted to make sure that she had plenty of energy when she got there. So she packed a bag of some food to take with her as she hiked up the mountain. The whole time she's like, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to get my daughter away from this ogre? This is terrible. And as she was walking, she happened to encounter a fox. And that fox looked up at her and it kind of blinked its eyes and it was just looking so sad. And the mother looked down and said, Fox, you look very, very hungry. And so she took that bag she had and she took, a fox-sized meal out of the bag and put it down in front of the fox, and the fox ate it right up. And he began to jump, and he was smiling, and the mother said, now, Fox, I've fed you. I've done you a favor. Will you do me a favor and help me find my daughter? And the fox followed the mother as she continued to hike up the mountain, where she and the fox encountered a wolf. The wolf looked very, very hungry. And so very quickly, the mother again reached into her bag and got a wolf-sized meal of food, put it down on the ground in front of the wolf, and just like the fox, the wolf went and ate it all up and looked much, much happier than he had before. So the mother looked at the wolf and said, Wolf, I have done a favor for you. Will you do a favor for me? I think the ogre has my daughter. Will you come and help me get her? And the mother started walking, trying again to find the cave of the ogre and the fox and the wolf right behind her. Now, they found the cave. And that ogre's cave, in front of that cave was a big flock of sheep. The ogre kept those in case he couldn't find a person to eat and he needed something else to snack on. And the mother thought for a second and said, Wolf, this is where I will need your help. I want you to go and I want you to get into that flock of sheep and I want you to scare them and just chase them out of sight. And the wolf did that. He started growling, and they went into the flock of sheep, and the sheep were like, bah, bah, and they all began running all over the place, and the wolf was chasing after them and chased them out of sight. Now, the ogre heard all of this noise, and he came out to see what was going on. Now, when he got there, he saw his sheep were gone, and really the only thing at the entrance to his cave was this fox. And the ogre was very unhappy at this whole situation and began to chase the fox. Now, that fox was little, but boy, he was quick. And the ogre just started chasing him everywhere. And the ogre just got madder and madder because the fox was getting away. But the fox was good and made sure the ogre was out of sight of the cave, and the mother snuck in, and she looked around the cave. There were all of these bones of people that the ogre had eaten before, but there was a sack in that cave, and the sack was moving. The mother ran over, opened up the sack, and of course, the daughter was inside. And the daughter said, Mother, thank you for coming to get me. Thank you so much. And they hugged. And the mother said, we've got to get out of here. We have got to get home and back behind locked doors. Yes, Mother, the daughter said. And so, hand in hand, they began running down the mountain and safely back home. Now, the ogre had been chasing that wolf for quite a while, and finally he realized he really wasn't big enough of a bite for the ogre to eat anyway. So he thought, I've still got that little girl there. She can be breakfast for me. That'll be fine. But when the ogre got back to the cave and went inside, he saw that that sack was empty and the little girl had escaped. Now, the ogre had been mad most of the day. He was furious. He now had nothing to eat. He was exhausted. And all he could think of was going back down to the house where the mother and the daughter lived. And the mother was going to be lunch because the daughter was already planned for breakfast. Now, as the ogre started going down the mountain towards their house, who should he run into but Fox? Now, Fox was sitting right at the edge of a cliff that went down thousands of feet to the bottom. And the ogre came by and said, You have been a problem for me this morning, Fox. You run too fast, but you're here right now. I'm going to grab you, and you're going to be my appetizer before my breakfast. I have no idea what you're talking about, Fox said. There are thousands of foxes all over these mountains. I am not a trick-playing fox. I am a basket-weaving fox. And indeed, in front of him was a half-done basket, a huge basket that Fox had been working on. And the fox said, can't trick you, but, I can teach you how to weave a basket. Would you like to learn that? And Ogre thought, well, I'll still eat the fox when it's all done, but sure, I'd like to learn a new skill, so I'll learn how to do the basket. Now, as I'm sure you figured out, this was the same fox that he had been chasing, and this was his trick. He told the ogre to sit in the middle of the basket. You see, ogre, Fox said, if you sit in the middle and you can see how putting all the different grasses and things works from the inside of the walls, it's a lot easier to learn how to do than if you're sitting on the outside. So go ahead and sit here right in the middle of the basket. Okay, the ogre said, and the ogre sat in the middle of the basket. And Fox just kept up this talking and teaching. It's like, oh, we have to put this grass this way and this one goes this way. Now make sure you use the right kind of grass. And he just kept building and building and building and building this basket. And the ogre was so intent on listening to how to make a basket, he didn't notice until it was too late that that fox was making a basket that was completely closed, like a ball. And before the ogre had half a second to figure out how to get out of that basket, Fox got up. He came around to the back of that basket, put his hands up against it, and shoved it right over the side of the cliff. And the ogre went down and down and down until he crashed at the bottom. And the ogre on that mountain was no longer a problem. And that's the story of the old ogre from Tibet. I hope you enjoyed my stories. Please stick around and enjoy the whole rest of the Harvest Fest. And thank you for being such great listeners. Bye.
Thank you so much, Kim. Those are some excellent stories, getting me really in the mood here, here in October. And it's nice to actually be able to hear the stories myself, because with the in-person Harvest Fest event, there's a lot of moving parts happening, and sometimes I don't get to hear as many of the stories. So it's actually nice to sit down and listen to some. You did an excellent job. Thank you. Ramona is watching from Elgin, and she said thank you as well.
Oh,
I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And as Kim mentioned, this is just the first piece of our virtual Harvest Fest today. Tune in throughout the day on our Facebook and YouTube page for more. Ramona is saying encore. I know Kim does storytelling on the Spurlock Museum page all the time. Is that right, Kim?
We just recently changed things around a little bit, but each Wednesday on the Facebook page for Spurlock, from 1:15 to 1:45, I just do stories from around the world. Sometimes there's themes, sometimes it's just stories that I love, but we have a really good time. So please come and join us.
Yeah. Check out the Spurlock Museum Facebook page for Kim's stories on there. She does a really excellent job with those stories. So again, thank you to Kim. Thank you to all of you out there watching, and stay tuned throughout the day for more Museum of the Grand Prairie Harvest Fest content. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.